We begin tonight with the worst single blow to U.S. forces since the war in Afghanistan began nearly 10 years ago. A helicopter crash has killed 30 Americans, and early indications are the Taliban is to blame. Elizabeth Palmer in London has the latest.
The Chinook helicopter came down in Wardak province, just southwest of Kabul. Of the 30 Americans aboard, 22 were members of the Special Operations Navy SEAL Team 6, the same unit that killed Osama bin Laden. The other 8 were Army and Air Force personnel. A civilian translator, 7 Afghan commandos, and a specially trained dog also died. The crash site has now been cordoned off, but the Taliban claim they shot down the Chinook early this morning, just as it was taking off after a raid on their fighters. U.S. military sources say it was called in as backup by another unit which had run into trouble. Local witnesses report the Chinook was hit with a rocket-propelled grenade, a popular weapon among the Taliban because it's light and cheap, although it's usually inaccurate. From Camp David, President Barack Obama said, "Their deaths are a reminder of the extraordinary sacrifice made by the men and women of our military and their families." In the rugged hinterland of Afghanistan, where roads are non-existent or mined, helicopter raids are a key part of U.S. strategy. Multiple times a night, they swoop in on groups of Taliban fighters in the dark and kill them, especially in this sensitive area just 50 miles from the capital, where the Taliban have a stronghold. But the raids are controversial. They've killed Afghan families and innocent civilians by mistake, and they are dangerous for U.S. forces. In April 2005, a U.S. Chinook came down in a sandstorm not far from today's crash site, killing 18 Americans. And in June of the same year, 16 Special Operations troops died when their helicopter was shot down near the Pakistani border. Today's deaths bring the total number of Americans killed this year in Afghanistan to 297. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
The war in Afghanistan is taking an increased toll among Afghan civilians as well. The most recent UN report says more than 1,400 civilians were killed in conflict-related incidents during the first 6 months of this year. That's up 15% over the same period last year. The report blames insurgents for 80% of the deaths.
Officials say 31 U.S. Special Operation troops and 7 Afghan commandos have been killed in a helicopter crash. AP sources say the majority of those killed were from Navy SEAL Team 6. Officials say the helicopter was apparently shot down by insurgents in the eastern part of the country. It is the single deadliest incident for U.S. forces during the decade-long war. Officials say the helicopter was a Chinook, like one seen here, used to carry troops. President Barack Obama says the deaths are a reminder of the extraordinary price the U.S. military is paying in Afghanistan. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for the attack and says in the statement the helicopter was brought down by a rocket while it was taking part in a raid on a house. NATO officials in Afghanistan say they are trying to determine the details of what happened, but they acknowledge there was enemy activity in the area. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has sent his condolences to President Obama. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
The Taliban is taking responsibility for shooting down a U.S. helicopter. More than 30 people were killed, and there are reports this morning that most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs. ABC's Martha Raddatz is in Washington. And Martha, what do we know right now about this deadly incident?
This is just devastating news, Bianna. It was a U.S. aircraft, a Chinook aircraft, and on board, according to a senior U.S. military official, 25 Navy SEALs, 7 Afghan forces, likely special forces, 1 interpreter, the 5-member crew of the Chinook helicopter, and 1 dog. As we all know, dogs are in these operations. We know this from the Osama bin Laden raid. So devastating, this news, and especially after that news in May that SEALs were able to kill Osama bin Laden in a raid. Today's crash, and they do believe it was from enemy fire, possibly a rocket-propelled grenade. They believe it was shot down right after an operation. This was in Wardak province. Now, I also want to add that the first person to say these were U.S. Special Operations Forces was Hamid Karzai, the president of Afghanistan. He released a written statement sending his condolences for the loss of those troops in the Afghan forces as well. But he was the first to say Special Operations Forces, and we did confirm through a senior military official they were Navy SEALs. This, as you know, beyond a very, very small community of these highly trained elite U.S. forces.
That is true. A devastating blow this morning. Martha, you know this area very well. How dangerous is it to fly over this region in Afghanistan?
Well, they've certainly lost several helicopters, but this is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident since this war began. Helicopters are hit fairly often, but they're usually much smaller helicopters. Again, this is how you transport SEALs. This is how you transport troops in these large Chinook helicopters. You're really kind of squeezed in these helicopters. They're the kind that open from the back so the troops can get out and in.
All right, a devastating story, huge loss of life. Martha, we appreciate you waking up early this morning for us and bringing us the latest. Thank you.
Now to the latest on the single largest loss of life for U.S. troops in Afghanistan. 38 people, including 30 Americans, were killed early Saturday when their helicopter was shot down. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin is at the Pentagon with more. David, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. The bodies of the dead Americans are scheduled to begin their final journey home tonight. They fly out of Afghanistan and will arrive at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware tomorrow morning. 30 Americans were killed Saturday morning when their Chinook helicopter went down, apparently hit by a rocket-propelled grenade. They had been brought in as backup for another team of commandos who had called for help after hitting the compound of a local Taliban leader in the Tangi Valley just west of Kabul. Of the 30 Americans aboard, 22 were Navy SEALs, most of them members of the now famous SEAL Team 6, the same unit that killed Osama bin Laden. The other 8 were Army and Air Force personnel, plus a civilian translator, 7 Afghan commandos, and a specially trained dog. The Pentagon has not officially released the names of those killed, but word is spreading as the friends and family mourn their loss. Many of them were still in their 20s and 30s, some with young children. Their families knew they were in a kill or be killed business.
Like crazy, he's going over. It's flip of a coin if he comes back or not.
That was the brother of Michael Strange, a young man from North Philadelphia whose father will never see him again.
He loves all you guys and all his friends, all the kids who were here yesterday.
They came from all over the United States. Craig Vickers, a bomb disposal expert, was from the Hawaiian Islands. Kevin Houston, a father of 3, from Massachusetts. John Brown, a medic with the SEALs, was from Arkansas. His wife and mother were among the 30 families who heard the worst possible news.
The Office of Armed Forces had called my daughter-in-law, Tabitha, and informed her that my son John had been killed this morning in Afghanistan.
Today, there is a long-scheduled change of command ceremony at the U.S. Special Operations Command in Florida. That's the headquarters for the Navy SEALs. What had been planned as a celebration will now be a very somber event. Chris?
All right, CBS's David Martin at the Pentagon for us this morning. David, thank you.
Next tonight, a helicopter is shot down in Afghanistan, resulting in the worst day of U.S. casualties in 10 years. Margaret Warner has the story.
Attack helicopters patrolled the skies today as U.S. troops on the ground cordoned off the crash site south of Kabul. 30 Americans, including 22 Navy SEALs, plus 7 Afghan troops and an interpreter, died early Saturday in the Tangi Valley when their Chinook helicopter was shot down, apparently by a rocket-propelled grenade. The Taliban claimed responsibility. U.S. commanders in Kabul said the SEAL force was sent to assist Army Rangers, who come under fire by insurgents during an operation to nab a Taliban leader. The Tangi Valley lies in mountainous Wardak province just 50 miles southwest of Kabul. U.S. forces turned over the valley's sole American outpost to Afghan forces last spring. At the White House this afternoon, President Obama said the work of the men and their mission goes on.
I know that our troops will continue the hard work of transitioning to a stronger Afghan government, and ensuring that Afghanistan is not a safe haven for terrorists.
The fallen men were members of the Navy's vaunted SEAL Team 6, the same special forces unit that killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, though none of the same troops were involved. In Tampa today, Admiral William McRaven, who ran the bin Laden mission, was installed as chief of the entire Special Operations Command. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta lauded the contributions of Special Ops forces to the decade-long war.
We know that these successes are driven by the willingness of these brave warriors to shoulder heavy burdens, to take on great risks. And as we all know, that comes oftentimes at a very high cost.
This was the second U.S. helicopter shot down in Afghanistan in the past 2 weeks.
And now to our honor roll of American service personnel killed in the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts. Yesterday, the Pentagon released the names of the 30 troops, Navy SEALs, soldiers, and airmen killed in the helicopter down by insurgents in eastern Afghanistan last weekend. Here in silence are the names and photographs of all 30 men.
President Obama paid tribute today to the 30 U.S. troops killed over the weekend in Afghanistan, and he vowed to press on there and succeed. The Americans, including 22 Navy SEALs, were killed when their helicopter was shot down in Wardak Province. David Martin reports their remains will be flown tomorrow to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware.
It will take 2 transport planes to bring all the flag-draped caskets home. 30 Americans were aboard that Chinook helicopter when it went down. A crash so horrific their remains have not yet been identified. A shocking loss for the nation, an indescribable one for the stepfather of Navy SEAL Brian Bill.
We're heartbroken. We mourn more than anything else his life of unfulfilled dreams. He was already an accomplished mountaineer, skier, pilot, and triathlete.
As families and friends of the 30 who died on Saturday came forward, we learned that the youngest, door gunner Spencer Duncan, was just 21. His friends back in Kansas can hardly believe it.
I think numb is a great way to describe it for now.
Even harder to comprehend for people in Shreveport, Louisiana, where Lieutenant Commander Jonas Kelsall and Chief Petty Officer Robert Reeves played on the same high school soccer team.
You know, the war comes home to you when it's a neighbor, when it's a hometown boy, and here we've lost 2 of them.
Among the oldest is 36-year-old Kevin Houston, one of 22 Navy SEALs aboard the helicopter. Matt Mills had been a SEAL for 10 years, which means he was a veteran of countless nighttime raids. The SEALs aboard the Chinook were assigned to back up another team which had hit a compound in the Tanji Valley west of Kabul, looking for a local Afghan leader. The team got pinned down in a firefight and called for help. The Chinook, with the 30 Americans, 8 Afghans, and 1 dog aboard, was apparently hit by a rocket-propelled grenade as it came in. A Taliban commander told CBS News the man the SEALs were looking for wasn't there. We had all our forces in position to defend our valley, he said, and our commander is alive and well.
Earlier this afternoon, the aircraft carrying the Americans took off from Afghanistan for the final journey home. They will arrive at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware tomorrow morning. Anthony?
David Martin at the Pentagon. Thanks, David.
U.S. officials are telling the Associated Press that the American troops whose helicopter was shot down by insurgents were on a mission to help a group of Army Rangers who had come under heavy fire. 22 Navy SEALs, along with 3 Air Force combat controllers, a dog handler and his dog, plus 4 crew members, were all killed. 7 Afghan commandos and a civilian translator also died. People who live in this village, located about 60 miles outside of Kabul, say they heard the crash around 2:30 Saturday morning. This man says the helicopter was flying really low before it was hit by the Taliban. He says the chopper caught fire after it crashed, and hours later he saw several body parts along the road. Some of them were badly burned. The attack marks the deadliest single loss of American forces in the decade-old war in Afghanistan, and it was a blow to the elite Navy unit that killed Osama bin Laden and their admirers.
I was just on the internet and heard about it on Facebook. It kind of hit me hard because I want to be a Navy SEAL.
Authorities say the men who died over the weekend were not the same people who participated in the bin Laden mission, but they were members of SEAL Team 6. In Virginia Beach, Virginia, an area with a large military presence, several residents say they probably knew at least one of the servicemen who died.
It's horrible. It is. It's really just, other than cry, you don't know what else to do, really. I mean, it's sad.
In neighboring Norfolk, a solemn moment before Navy night at a minor league baseball game.
Loss of any one of those is tragic, but such a large group together that's a pretty tough one to take.
Back in Afghanistan, American and Afghan troops are battling insurgents near the crash site. Meanwhile, NATO is working to recover remains of the large transport helicopter. The clashes Sunday didn't appear to involve NATO troops. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
Afghan President Hamid Karzai said this morning 31 U.S. Special Forces and 7 Afghan soldiers were killed in one of the deadliest single attacks for American troops in nearly 10 years of war in Afghanistan. Afghan officials say a NATO Chinook helicopter crashed during an anti-Taliban mission overnight in a region west of Kabul. The Taliban says its fighters shot down the helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade. Sources tell CBS News the Chinook was carrying U.S. and Afghan forces in the Wardak region during an operation against a suspected Taliban compound that started shortly after midnight. The chopper was struck and crashed into the valley. President Karzai sent his condolences to President Obama for victims of the crash. The deadly attack comes amid rising violence in Afghanistan and happened in the Tangi Valley, region known for its Taliban activity. Nighttime strikes are one of the most successful ways U.S. Special Forces have to target Taliban hideouts, but they're also one of the riskiest. Charlie Daggett of CBS News, London.
And now to that breaking news out of Afghanistan this morning. 31 U.S. troops have been killed after their helicopter was shot down. It's the single most deadly incident in the war in Afghanistan. It happened in the Wardak province in the eastern part of the country. Afghan President Hamid Karzai expressed his condolences to President Obama after initially reporting the crash. NATO officials confirm the crash and say they are conducting a recovery mission at the scene. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for the attack.
Late breaking this morning, 31. This is a tragic story from overseas. 31 U.S. soldiers, operation troops, have been killed in the past 12 hours.
It happened just last night in a helicopter crash. This is the largest number of troops killed in a single incident since the war in Afghanistan first started. The president of Afghanistan sent his condolences.
On 6 August 2011, a U.S. CH-47D Chinook military helicopter operating with the call sign Extortion 17 was shot down while transporting an immediate reaction force attempting to reinforce a Joint Special Operations Command unit of the 75th Ranger Regiment in the Tangi Valley in Maidan Wardak Province, southwest of Kabul, Afghanistan. The resulting crash killed all 38 people on board 25 U.S. Navy SEALs, 1 pilot and 2 crewmen of the United States Army Reserve, 1 pilot and 1 crewman of the United States Army National Guard, 7 members of the Afghan National Security Forces, and 1 Afghan interpreter, as well as a U.S. military working dog. At 31 American military personnel killed, the shoot-down of Extortion 17 represents the greatest single-incident loss of American lives in Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, surpassing the 16 lost in the downing of Turbine 33, a 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment MH-47, during Operation Red Wings on 28 June 2005. In March 2009, the U.S. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you would like to view more of our videos. Have a nice day.